Contemporary Topics 1, Second Edition, by Helen Solorzano and Laurie Frazier. Copyright 2002 Longman Publishing Group, a Pearson Education Company. All rights reserved. The use of this audio program for the purpose of copying, transforming, or adapting in any manner, in whole or in part, is strictly prohibited without prior consent of Pearson Education. Unit 7. Are we alone? Page 53. Vocabulary Preview. Part C. Listen to each sentence and repeat it. Try to pronounce the bold-faced word correctly. 1.
There may be other intelligent beings in the universe. Beings.
2.
There are many other galaxies in the universe. Galaxies.
3.
The nearest star is 4.2 light years away. Light years.
4.
Astronomers plan to investigate the universe. Investigate.
5.
It would take approximately 4 years to get there. Approximately.
6.
I can't get a signal on my radio. Signal.
7.
My radio has a short range. Range.
8.
I couldn't locate the star. Locate.
9.
Our research is restricted to astronomy. Restricted.
10.
I like to look through my telescope. Telescope.
Page 55. Listening for main ideas. A. Close your book. Listen to the lecture and take notes.
Hello, everyone. Is everyone here? Well, let's get started. We were talking last time about the possibility of other intelligent life in the universe. So that's where I want to pick up today. Today we'll look at the SETI project. That's the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. This is a project to look for signs of intelligent life on other planets in the universe. So, first, why do we think there may be other intelligent life in the universe? Well, it's because there are many, many other galaxies in the universe that could support life. We on Earth, we are one planet going around one star. But our galaxy has approximately 400 billion other stars. Stars that may have other planets where intelligent beings could live. And throughout the universe, there are at least 100 billion, that's 100 billion other galaxies. So most scientists think that somewhere in these 100 billion galaxies, there must be other planets that are similar to our Earth, and that at least one of those planets has other intelligent beings. We just have to locate them. Now, how does the SETI project search for life? The SETI project searches for life using large radio telescopes. These radio telescopes search for radio signals in space. They are looking for signals that could be from other intelligent beings. We hope that somewhere there are intelligent beings who are looking for us, who are sending out a signal. Perhaps they are asking the same questions we ask. Are we alone? Is there anyone else out there? Now, in my opinion, this is some of the most exciting scientific research being done today. Why? Why is it so exciting? Well, I think that locating other intelligent life, if and when this happens, will completely change how we think about ourselves and about the universe. Just imagine, knowing that there are other beings out there, that we are not alone. So I think this is one of the most interesting areas to investigate. So the SETI project tries to locate intelligent beings in the universe by searching for radio signals from space. But why radio signals? Well, there are two reasons radio signals are better. First, they travel very quickly. Second, they have a long range. They can go very far into space. So how fast do radio signals travel? Well, they travel very quickly, at the speed of light. So, for example, the nearest galaxy, Alpha Centauri, is approximately 4.2 light-years away. Traveling at the speed of light, it takes 4 years for a radio signal to reach us. On the other hand, the fastest rocket only travels about 10 miles per second. At that speed, it would take 60,000 years to reach the Alpha Centauri galaxy. So radio signals are definitely faster. Now, what is the range of radio signals? Well, they have a very long range. They could travel through several galaxies to reach Earth. Radio signals can also travel through space dust and other things floating around in space. So if any intelligent beings in other galaxies are sending radio signals, there's a good chance that the signals can reach Earth. I see a question.
Yes. Why don't we just send rockets to look for intelligent life?
Good question. I'm glad you asked. Well, for one thing, they're much slower. Unlike radio signals, rockets can't travel at the speed of light. Also, they don't have a very wide range. In addition, you're restricted to looking in one direction. You point the rocket in one direction and go that way. But we can search for radio signals in every part of the universe, not restricting ourselves to one direction. So overall, you can see why searching for radio signals is better. Okay, so that's all for today. Next time we'll talk more about this and talk about what we will do when we hear a signal, a very important question. So think about that. What should we do when we hear a signal from another intelligent being? Until then, have a good week. I'll see you next time.
Page 56. Listening for details. A. Close your book. Listen to the lecture again. Add details to your notes and correct any mistakes. Unit 7. Quiz. A. Listen to each question. Circle the letter of the correct answer. 1.
What is the SETI project looking for?
Two.
Why do some scientists think there is intelligent life on other planets?
Three.
How does the SETI project look for life in other galaxies?
Four.
Why does the SETI project look for radio signals?
Unit 8. Do the right thing. Page 62. Vocabulary Preview. Part C. You will hear each word below in a sentence. Listen to the sentences. Write the number of the sentence that contains each word. 1.
The students need individual help.
2.
I believe in the right to free speech.
3.
It is important to respect people's beliefs.
4.
My religion is the source of my ethics.
5.
You have the ability to make your own decisions.
Six.
The family went to the funeral.
7.
I try to follow my principles.
8.
There is a common belief that killing is wrong.
9.
We need to analyze the problem.
10.
You have to justify your decision.
Page 64. Listening for main ideas. A. Close your book. Listen to the lecture and take notes.
Ethics. Most of you are probably familiar with this term, but what does it mean? Ethics are the rules we follow to decide what is right and what is wrong. So, in this class, we'll be asking ourselves, what is ethical in different situations? How do we decide what is right or wrong? We'll look at different ethical principles to do this. We'll use these ethical principles to analyze a situation and justify our decision about what to do. So, today we're going to use an example, the example from your homework, and look at it from two different ethical principles. We'll look at it from the principle of individual rights and the principle of common good. Let me repeat that. We're going to look at two principles. First, I'll just review the example. A woman is dying. She has $10,000 in the bank, but she has no family. The woman tells her friend to use her money to hold a very expensive funeral. She tells the friend to buy a lot of flowers and the most expensive coffin. However, the friend thinks this is a waste of money. The friend decides to use some of the money for a simple funeral and then give most of it to a school for homeless children. However, the friend lies to the woman and says he will use all the money to pay for the funeral. Now, is this lie ethical? Let's start with the principle of individual rights. The source of this principle is the writing of Immanuel Kant, the German philosopher of the 18th century. Kant had believed that our most important right as humans is our ability to think and make decisions. Unlike an animal, each person has the power to make choices and think about what we are doing. Animals cannot think and decide like people can. This ability to think is what makes us human. Therefore, to be ethical, you must think. Am I respecting the right of other people to think and make decisions? So that's how we can define the principle of individual rights, to respect other people's right to think and make decisions. So, what would Kant say about our example of the dying woman and her friend? Can we justify the lie under the principle of individual rights? Well, using this principle, the friend's lies are ethically wrong. Actually, any kind of lie is wrong because each person has the right to know the truth. Lying is wrong because when we lie, we take away the other person's ability to think and make decisions. So in our example, the friend is not respecting the dying woman's right to make decisions about her money. So, following the principle of individual rights, the lie is not ethical. It is wrong. Do you see that? Now let's look at the problem using another ethical principle, the principle of common good. Let's start by defining common good. The source of the principle of common good is the writings of Jeremy Bentham, who lived in England during the 17th and 18th centuries. Common good basically means choosing whatever is good for most people. This principle says that it is okay to hurt some people sometime, but only if the same action helps more people. So basically, the principle of common good means that to be ethical, We should choose the action that helps the most people and hurts the fewest people. I'll repeat that. The action that helps the most people and hurts the fewest people. Got that? Okay. So let's look at our example of the dying woman and her friend. What are the choices here? Well, the friend can tell the truth to the dying woman. He can tell her that he won't have the expensive funeral, that he'll give the money to the school. But then what? The dying woman may disagree. She may decide to pick someone else to organize the funeral, someone who will follow her wishes. And she'll get mad at her friend. So, from a common good viewpoint, this is not a good choice. The woman gets mad, the friend gets hurt, and the school doesn't get any money. On the other hand, if the friend lies, he helps more people than he hurts. Sure, the dying woman will not get her wish, but many children will be helped because they will get a better education. Also, you can say that the children with a better education will be better people, will earn more money in their jobs, and give more to society. So, following the principle of common good, the friend can justify the lie to the dying woman. One person will be hurt, but many people will be helped. So I've just explained the difference between the ethics of individual rights and the ethics of common good. Now let's look at some more examples and analyze the ethics of these new examples.
Page 65. Listening for details. A. Close your book. Listen to the lecture again. Add details to your notes and correct any mistakes. Unit 8. Quiz. A. Listen to each question. Circle the letter of the correct answer. 1.
What is the principle of common good?
2.
What is the principle of individual rights?
3.
Whose writing is the source of the principle of individual rights?
4.
What ethical principle can be used to justify lying?
9. A good night's sleep. Page 72. Vocabulary Preview. Part C. Listen to each sentence. Circle the word you hear. 1.
Doctors recognize that sleep is important for health.
2.
Feeling tired is a consequence of not getting enough sleep.
3.
I'm in the habit of going to bed early.
4.
I need a minimum of 8 hours sleep a night.
5.
Many sleep problems are related to health problems.
6.
One function of sleep is to help our brains relax.
7.
Most people require a good night's sleep.
8.
Lack of sleep creates problems at school.
9.
We We did a survey of 1,000 adults.
Ten.
Sleep deprivation is a big problem.
9. Page 74. Listening for main ideas. A. Close your book. Listen to the lecture and take notes.
Hi, everyone. Let's get started. Do you have the handout from our last class? Okay. For homework, I asked you to answer the questions on your handout about sleep. Let's look at the first question. How many hours of sleep did you get last night?
6 hours.
I see. Anyone get less sleep than that?
I got 5 hours of sleep.
Only 5 hours? Well, I hope you can stay awake during my lecture today. Well, later, we'll talk some more about our own sleep habits. But first, today I'm going to talk about the problem of sleep deprivation, of not getting enough sleep. I'll talk about some of the causes of sleep deprivation and then some of the effects. Let's start with the problem of sleep deprivation. Many people don't recognize that this is a serious health problem. However, today, more and more doctors are becoming worried about it. In fact, some call it the biggest health problem today. Most people today are deprived of sleep. They simply do not get enough sleep each night. And from your answers to the survey questions today, we can see that this is true in this class as well. Every year, the National Sleep Center does a survey in the United States asking people about their sleep habits and the effects of sleep deprivation on their lives. The results are quite dramatic. The information I'll give you today is from that survey. First, what are the causes of sleep deprivation? Why don't we get enough sleep? You may be surprised to learn that our modern lifestyle, that is, the way we live our lives, creates many of our sleep problems. But people today are very busy. They're working more and more hours every day. In fact, did you know that more than 30% of American adults work more than 50 hours a week? Well, as a result, there's less time to do other things, like read or pay bills or clean house, so people stay up later and get less sleep. The problem is also created by modern technology. 100 years ago, after the sun went down, there wasn't much to do. Everything was dark and people went to sleep early. Now everything is turned on 24 hours a day. Well, think about it. We have electric lights, TV, and the internet. You can watch TV or listen to music or work on the computer anytime, and that makes us stay up later. In fact, 43% of Americans say that they often stay up later than they should watching TV or using the internet. How many of you would say that you don't go to sleep when you should because of the TV or the internet? Yeah, sometimes it is hard to stop doing all those things and go to bed. Now I'm going to move on to the effects of sleep deprivation. Everyone needs a certain amount of sleep. Our bodies require a certain amount of sleep to function well. Now, most people require a minimum of 8 hours of sleep each night, although some people need more and others need less. But most people don't get enough sleep. Every night, many people sleep only 5, 6, or 7 hours instead of 8. So now, what are the effects of sleep deprivation? The most common effect is, of course, sleepiness during the day. Let me ask you, when do you feel sleepy? After lunch.
When my alarm clock wakes me up in the morning.
Yes, both of those are very common. Many people have trouble waking up and getting out of bed in the morning. And a lot of us feel sleepy after lunch. We may feel that it's normal to feel sleepy at those times, but really, it's related to sleep deprivation. It's an effect of not getting enough sleep. If you get all the sleep you need, you won't feel sleepy during those times. So, most people feel sleepy during the day. One consequence of this is mistakes at work. Without enough sleep, we don't function well. We don't have enough energy, and we can't always think very clearly. And there are many people at work each day who need more sleep. About 50% of Americans say they're usually sleepy at work. And about 20% say they make mistakes at work because they're sleepy. These mistakes can cost a lot of money, or can cause accidents that hurt or even kill people. Another consequence of sleep deprivation is car accidents. In the United States, there are 100,000 sleep-related accidents each year, causing 71,000 injuries and 1,500 deaths. But people don't recognize that driving while you're sleepy is very dangerous. It can have serious consequences. Too many people, more than 50% of Americans surveyed, say that they sometimes feel sleepy when they're driving. Almost 17% report that they sometimes fall asleep while driving. So this is a great health danger. So, as you can see, we need to recognize that sleep deprivation is a serious problem. We need to find out what creates the problem and figure out a way to change our sleep habits, to educate people about getting more sleep. As a first step, let's look at our own sleep habits. Please take out your homework again and we'll look at what you wrote.
Page 75. Listening for details. A. Close your book. Listen to the lecture again. Add details to your notes and correct any mistakes. Unit 9. Quiz. A. Listen to each question. Circle the letter of the correct answer. 1.
How does the National Sleep Center learn about sleep?
Two.
What is a cause of sleep deprivation?
Three.
What is an effect of sleep deprivation?
Four.
What percentage of Americans feel sleepy when driving?
Unit 10. Negotiating for Success. Page 81. Vocabulary Preview. Part C. Listen to each sentence and repeat it. Try to pronounce the bold-faced word correctly. 1.
Everyone should communicate clearly. Communicate.
2.
I don't know how to solve this problem. Solve.
3.
I try to avoid long meetings. Avoid.
4.
My boss blames me for the problem. Blames.
5.
My boss didn't react well to my report. React.
6.
My coworker and I have a conflict. Conflict.
7.
Sometimes I imagine that I'm a singer. Imagine.
8.
The problem affects Joe at work. Affects.
9.
There are many techniques for negotiation. Techniques.
10.
We talked about the issue. Issue.
83. Listening for main ideas. A. Close your book. Listen to the lecture and take notes.
Good morning, everybody. So, last class, we began talking about negotiation, the negotiation process. And we started to talk about some of the techniques you can use to communicate better in a negotiation. So that's where we'll start today. One of the most difficult issues in negotiation is when one side blames the other for something. And this is very common when one side feels that the other did something wrong or caused the conflict in some way. So what I'm going to talk about today is a technique to help you communicate better during this type of negotiation. Let's start with an example. Let's say that you are having a conflict with a coworker. Now, my coworker, let's call him Joe. Joe and I are working on a project together. But Joe didn't finish his work on time. And because of this, I couldn't finish my work on time either. We need to give the project to our boss, but it's not ready. The boss is angry. I blame Joe for this problem. Now, let's imagine that I go into Joe's office to talk to him, and I say what I'm really thinking. For instance, Joe, you aren't doing your work. The project's going to be late because of you. Okay, so this is one way to explain the issue. But how do you think Joe will react to this? How will he feel? Happy? Ready to communicate with me?
Angry? I'd be angry.
Yes, I think so. And do you think Joe will want to sit down with you and solve your problem?
No.
No, I doubt it. Actually, you've probably made the problem worse. What's happening here is that you are blaming Joe for the problem. He will get angry and won't want to communicate with you. So, as you can see, it is important not to blame the other person for the problem. You may want to say, this is your fault, you caused this problem, and even though this may be true, it will not help you solve the problem. So now, I'll introduce a technique you can use to avoid blaming someone. This technique is called using I statements. What you do is you start sentences with the word I. Say something like, I am upset about this problem. With this I statement, you avoid blaming the other person. You are explaining how you feel, how the problem affects you. So, let's go back to our example of Joe and the project at work. Let's see how we can rewrite the conversation using I statements. So, for instance, instead of saying, Joe, you aren't doing your work, let's make an I statement. Okay, let's change that to, Joe, I'm worried because the work isn't done. Okay. Do you hear the difference? Instead of blaming Joe for his late work, you are explaining how the problem affects you, that you are worried. Let's try another one. The project's going to be late because of you. We can change that to, I'm afraid that the project's going to be late. Again, now you are not blaming Joe. Instead, you are explaining how you feel. When negotiation doesn't work, the problem is not usually the issues in the negotiation. Most problems can be solved with enough time and communication. No, problems are caused by the way the people on both sides feel about the negotiation. So you need to avoid anything that will make people feel angry or upset. And using I statements is one way to develop that. Okay, that's all our time for today. Next time we'll talk about some more negotiation.
Page 83. Listening for details. A. Close your book. Listen to the lecture again. Add details to your notes and correct any mistakes. Unit 10. Quiz. A. Listen to each question. Circle the letter of the correct answer. 1.
What is one technique for successful negotiation?
2.
Why should you use I statements in a negotiation?
Three.
What often happens if you blame someone in a negotiation?
Four.
What usually causes problems in a negotiation?
Unit 11. Risking It. Page 89. Vocabulary Preview. Part C. You will hear each word below in a sentence. Listen to the sentences. Write the number of the sentence that contains each word. 1.
The circumstances made driving dangerous.
2.
There is a significant risk.
3.
He couldn't control the car.
4.
I like natural food.
5.
We compared high-risk versus low-risk activities.
6.
We perceive risk differently.
7.
The actual risk is high.
8.
Crossing the street is an everyday activity.
9.
Risk takers often injure themselves.
10.
Many accidents occur at night.
Page 91. Listening for main ideas. A. Close your book. Listen to the lecture and take notes.
Today I'm going to talk about risk, or how people think about risk. First, I'll discuss two concepts: perceived risk versus actual risk. Then I'll talk about why we worry about some risks more than others. There are two important terms you need to understand before we begin: perceived risk and actual risk. Perceived risk is the way a person thinks about risk. Perceived risk is how risky or unsafe a person thinks an activity is. This is opposed to actual risk, which is the true risk, the risk of something if you actually look at how many people are hurt or injured by an activity. So let's begin with an example. An example of perceived risk versus actual risk. Let's compare two ways to travel: flying versus driving a car. Many people drive a car each day, but they don't worry about it very much. They know that there is a risk of an accident, but most people will not say they are afraid of driving. They feel that the risk is low, so the perceived risk of driving is low. On the other hand, many people worry about flying. They are afraid that the airplane will have an accident and crash. They feel that the risk of flying is higher than the risk of driving. The perceived risk of flying is high. However, in these two examples, the actual risk is very different than the perceived risk. The actual risk of driving a car is high. many, many more people are actually hurt or injured in car accidents than in airplane accidents. The actual risk of flying is low. In fact, flying is 40 times safer than driving a car. But our perception is that flying is more dangerous. Why? Why do we worry about some risks more than others? Well, it turns out that we perceive risk differently in special circumstances. Some factors make a person feel that an activity is less risky. Some make us feel that an activity is more risky. But the circumstances really change our perception. There are three factors that make us feel that an activity is less risky. The first factor is control. Whether the risk is an activity we control as opposed to one we don't control. In circumstances where we have more control, we feel there is less risk. For example, let's look again at driving a car versus flying in an airplane. When we drive, we control the car. We decide where to drive and how fast to go. Therefore, we feel that driving is less risky. However, when we fly in an airplane, we do not control it. Someone else is flying it, so we feel it is more risky. The second factor is whether the risk is natural versus unnatural. When a risk is natural, we feel that there is less risk. For example, we can compare being near a nuclear power plant as opposed to being out in the sun. Nuclear power plants are unnatural. That is, they're created by people, so we feel that they have a significant risk. The sun is natural, so we feel that it's low risk. However, many more people get cancer each year from the sun than from nuclear power. So being in the sun has a higher actual risk, but we feel that being in the sun is less risky because it's natural. Finally, the third factor is how common the activity is. That is, whether the risk is part of an everyday activity in contrast to an unusual event. When the risk is an everyday activity, we feel that there is less risk. For example, let's look at our feelings about accidents in the home versus an airplane accident. As I said before, flying is not a risky way to travel. Airplane accidents are unusual, but they do sometimes occur. When there is an accident, it is reported in the news and it gets lots of attention. So people worry about these accidents more. However, accidents in the home occur all the time. Each day, many people are injured or even killed doing everyday things like walking down the stairs. But we don't worry about these everyday risks as much. So you can see from these examples that people's perception of risk is very different from actual risk, and you can understand some of the reasons why.
Page 91. Listening for details. A. Close your book. Listen to the lecture again. Add details to your notes and correct any mistakes. Unit 11. Quiz. A. Listen to each question. Circle the letter of the correct answer. 1.
What activity has a high perceived risk?
Two.
What is an example of a risk you can control?
Three.
What is an example of a natural risk?
Four.
What is an example of an everyday risk?
Unit 12, The Electronic Brain. Page 96, Vocabulary Preview, Part C. Listen to each sentence. Circle the word you hear. 1.
This computer is faster than my previous computers.
2.
The engineer will finish the plans.
3.
I did all the problems by hand.
4.
This is a complex problem.
5.
Technology has improved a lot.
6.
There's an error in this test.
7.
I'm going to program the computer.
8.
They design new computers.
9.
I finished the calculations.
10.
A computer has many elements.
Page 98. Listening for main ideas. A. Close your book. Listen to the lecture and take notes.
As we have seen in this class, the history of the computer is a long one, starting with ideas from the 17th century. But today, I'll be discussing a turning point in the history, a time when the dream of a computer became reality. I'm talking about the building of ENIAC, spelled E-N-I-A-C, the first electronic computer. There are several elements to this story. I'm going to start by discussing the reasons why the computer was built. Then we'll look at the two engineers on the project, the men who designed the computer. Then I'll describe the computer itself. Finally, I'll tell you what happened after ENIAC was built, what happened to the engineers who built it, and to the computer itself. So, let's begin with the reason why the computer was built. Work on ENIAC started in July of 1943 in the middle of World War II at the University of Pennsylvania. It was a secret project paid for by the United States Army. Previous to ENIAC, the Army had groups of young women who did the calculations for their scientific projects. These women were actually called computers. These women, the computers, they worked with adding machines to do the calculations by hand. Of course, this was very slow, and they made some errors. The Army wanted a way to do faster and better calculations. For this reason, they decided to try to build an electronic computer. Now, several scientists at this time were thinking about ways to design a computer, but most felt it was too difficult using the technology of the time. However, the Army really needed a way to do faster calculations, so it was willing to take this risk, to try building it. And so the project to build ENIAC began. Okay, let's look at the engineers on the project. The two engineers who designed the computer were named John Mackley and J. Presper Eckert. The first engineer, John Mackley, was a physicist. He was 35 years old when the ENIAC project started. He first became interested in building a computer because he wanted to predict the weather. But the calculations for this were impossible. It would take years to compute all the world's weather information. So he became interested in the idea of doing the calculations electronically. J. Presper Eckert, the second engineer on the ENIAC project, was much younger. He was only 24 years old when he started work on it. He was a PhD student studying electrical engineering. He was a brilliant engineer who, from the time he was a child, loved to design complex electronic machines. In this team, Mackley was the idea guy. He had a lot of great ideas. Eckert was the engineer. he found a way to make the ideas work. These two men were probably the most important elements of the project. They worked very well together and were brave enough, or maybe crazy enough, to try something totally new. Now, what did ENIAC look like? Well, if we compare it to computers today, of course they are very different. First, ENIAC was really big. The machine filled an 1,800 square foot room. That's about the size of a large 3-bedroom apartment. Each part of the computer was about 9 feet tall. ENIAC was a very complex machine. The designers had to program the computer to add, remember numbers, and so on. There were 40 different elements in a U shape around the room. In many ways, it was amazing that ENIAC worked at all. It had thousands and thousands of electronic parts. Each element had to work perfectly. But it did. It did the calculations and didn't make any errors. ENIAC could do 5,000 calculations per second, much more than any previous calculating machine. Of course, compared to computers today, this is slow. Computers today do 100 million calculations in 1 second. Today, you can put the computing power of ENIAC on a chip the size of the end of your pencil. But ENIAC was much faster than other machines at that time. It took 2 years to build ENIAC. It was finished in the fall of 1945 and shown to the public in February 1946. For many, it was the first time they had heard of the idea of a computer. Newspapers and magazines all over the world wrote articles about the amazing new electronic brain. But already, Eckert and Mackley had ideas for new, better computers. They started their own company, designing and building computers and selling them. And they did. They built 2 new types of computers, and they continued to work with computers for the rest of their careers. Although they never made a lot of money, they will always be remembered as the first computer engineers. As for ENIAC, the Army used the machine for 9 more years until it was turned off for the last time in 1955. You can now see some parts of ENIAC at the Smithsonian Museum in Washington.
Page 99. Listening for details. A. Close your book. Listen to the lecture again. Add details to your notes and correct any mistakes. Unit 12. Quiz. A. Listen to each question. Circle the letter of the correct answer. 1.
When was ENIAC built?
Two.
Who designed ENIAC?
3.
How many calculations could ENIAC make per second?
4.
How big was ENIAC?
'This is the end of the program.